tools and platforms that support communication, collaboration, task management, a trend that, in her opinion, is here to stay. So she mentioned the rhythm of business that those changes brought as something that demands a different approach to how we work. She's commented on the flexibility and openness to new ideas that the new world requires. In her own words, the world is constantly changing, and we need to adapt quickly and evolve in line with the change we're being prompted to follow. According to her, efforts to improve efficiency and performance in 2023 should be driven by data to help track progress towards end goals and reevaluate impact when a change is required. And last but not least, she also mentioned workspace standardization and routine task automation as ways of promoting focus, organization, avoid personal or non-compliant data repositories, and of course, promoting cost and time savings. Okay, so that given, if we consider all of those challenges and opportunities, how might we turn these challenges and opportunities into a project management strategy that supports hybrid work in a fast-paced environment while leveraging data and existing processes to drive performance, efficiency, and minimize error? Philippa, can I ask you to mute the audience, please?
Sure.
Thank you. I was having some background noise here. Thank you. Okay, so I think the best way for us to start envisioning this strategy is through storytelling. So I'm going to spend the next couple of minutes telling you the story of Healthy Foods. Healthy Foods is a multinational enterprise in the food industry that operates factories and stores all over the world. Anthony leads Healthy Food Services Department. His team oversees all business development projects that Healthy Food has: factories expansion, subsidiary creation, stores opening, and a lot of those. In 2021, this was what happened whenever a new project was won. The leadership team met with Anthony to share high-level details on projects, things like project goal, expected start and end date, hours allocated, small project details. Then Anthony invited one senior project manager to define a team to deliver the project. He shared again the same details that he had been given with the senior project managers, who on their end will also need to share those details with their team members who will be working with them on projects. Let's meet Maria. Maria is a senior project manager, part of Anthony's team. Whenever she was designated as the senior manager in charge of any new project, she had a checklist of tools that she used and a very well thought structure to use those tools. Among her favorite tools were a plan on Microsoft Planner, a budget report on Power BI, a team within Microsoft Teams, and an internal SharePoint team site. She called this collection of tools, rules, best practices, her workspace, a cohesive unit of files, tasks, reports, conversations that are related to a certain project. The goal of these workspaces was for Maria, her team, her managers to have visibility over projects, almost like a snapshot of a project at a certain time. Now, because Maria did not have the permissions to set up these workspaces in Microsoft 365, she had to email Anthony whenever she needed one of those tools set up for a new project. It was then up to Anthony to manually create the workspaces required by Maria, as he was the only one with the permissions to do that. Unfortunately, Anthony was a busy guy. He had too much on his plate to systematically be creating workspaces on request whenever someone sent him an email. So workspaces ended up being created very late with the wrong naming conventions, with missing details, the wrong owners, the wrong members. And it was very frequent that Maria had to go back to Anthony and tell him that details were missing, or to ask for something that had been forgotten to be provisioned. And that, of course, not only delayed the project, but ended up causing some frustration between the team members. And challenges did not really end there, because once the workspaces were created empty, it was up to each senior project manager to structure the workspace and define what will be stored, registered, communicated where. And we know Maria had given a lot of thought to her workspace and that she always tried to create a similar structure independently of the project type. Alex, who is a second project manager, was a bit different. He preferred to stay flexible and open, to feel how the project was going to evolve, and always ended up tailoring his workspaces to specific project types. What he thought is that a factory expansion project couldn't be managed in the same way, with the same structure, as a store opening project. Naturally, however, when things got busy, pieces started falling behind. Maria ended up not following the same structure for all workspaces, and not just because she does not have the time to go through all that manual work, but also because she realizes that Alex was kind of right, and stores opening required a different structure than factory expansions. So she ended up not only having to do a lot of manual work to set the workspaces up, but she also ended up doing a lot of customizations on top of it. Alex, on the other hand, ends up leaving most tools blank and not functional, because customizing everything for each and every client and project would take him too much time to reflect on specific needs. And more often than not, he realized that, well, they were not that different, all the projects, right? And the fact that his team felt that the workspaces were not mature enough to be used made them go and search for other tools that they felt would be easier and would be more under their own control. Inevitably, this leads to project information being lost, spread between personal and shared folders and notebooks, workspaces being left abandoned, and productive consultants who didn't have standard processes and practices between projects and their leaders. And in the end, projects ended up being sidetracked and teams less performant because of operational inconsistencies. In face of the numbers, Anthony, the lead of the Healthy Food Services team, challenged Maria and Alex to work together to discuss differences between project types, including specific requirements that each project type might have. Things like, what's the kind of data shared? Is it documents or pictures? What's the collaboration frequency? How many participants are there in each project type? And then based on those requirements, it would be possible to reflect on which digital workspace features were more aligned with individual needs. At the end, it's all about purpose, right? What tools do we need to achieve the outcomes that we've set ourselves to? Do we need to collaborate on documents? Do we need to register deliveries and how they're progressing? Do we need to report on success metrics, right? Now, once we've agreed on these features and on the purpose of the workspace, another critical thing was agreeing on ownership and roles. So who requests new workspaces? Who approves the creation of new workspaces? And who owns and contributes to each workspace that's created? And last but not least, Alex ended up realizing the benefits of standardization, and he challenged Maria to go a step further. He listed all the data entries that were done manually after the workspace was created. He was wondering whether there was a way to have those details automatically added to the workspace when it was provisioned. After many late nights of work, Alex and Maria ended up agreeing that store opening and factory expansion projects had different workspace requirements. Store opening projects in particular had four main areas of intervention: security, electronics, merchandising, and staffing. Under these four areas, all the documents, messages, tasks, and reports will aggregate, right? They would all fall under these four categories. To avoid workspace sprawl, which they also realized as an issue, the creation of new workspaces needed to be requested by a senior project manager, Maria or Alex, and approved by the services lead, Anthony. Also, on ownership and contribution, They agreed that it was important for IT to keep an eye on digital workspaces created so that they could still keep giving support. Of course, together with the workspace requester, so the senior project manager who is going to manage the team in charge of the project. Members of the workspace had naturally to be the team members that were going to work on the project assets and need to communicate between each other. But ideally, they should be added to the workspace as soon as they're assigned to a project. And finally, visitors, who are usually third-party suppliers or contractors, they should be able to access data for some projects, but permissions had to be granted by Anthony, the services lead, so that to them, so that they could have access to those documents and workspaces. And finally, to avoid sprawl and support governance, it was important to ensure that all workspaces created were listed on a single view that allowed everyone to check what had been created, what was being used, what had to be decommissioned. Now, one very important thing was the content of the workspace. And Alex and Maria ended up agreeing on the ideal workspace for store opening projects based on Maria's recommendations for the tools she was used to use. So they agreed on 4 platforms: Planner for task management, Power BI for budget reporting, Teams for communication, and SharePoint for data storage, for things like team contacts, calendars, and overall data repository. While they were discussing content for each tool, Alex and Maria realized that there was a lot of repetitive work that they did in all workspaces, because store opening projects don't differ that much between each other. So when opening a new store, one of the mandatory tasks that ended up being added to the plan always was writing a job description for hiring new staff. When a report was created to report on budgets, there was always a data set created with the expense category, the date the expense was reported, and the value. When a team was created to communicate, the channels always follow the same naming conventions. And when the SharePoint site was created, there was always manual data added to the site. Things like project goal or duration or budget or team members. Once they had all these requirements mapped out, they started looking for a solution that could help them make this into a reality. And that's when they found out about BindTuning and the Automate 365 solution. This slide represents how everything came together for LT Foods and for store opening projects after they've met BindTuning and started using Automate 365. So in the first swim lane, you see Maria and Alex grabbing all the best practices they agreed on to create a sample workspace that includes the 4 platforms we talked about: Planner, Power BI, Teams, and SharePoint. Using Automate 365, they saved those sample workspaces together with all the rules and the authorizations, permissions. They pack it as a template, which then becomes available in their templates gallery. With the assistance of the BindTuning team, they set up a workflow that incorporates all of the findings they've done in terms of ownership and approvals and standardization and data mappings. So whenever Alex or Maria request a new workspace through an app that was developed specifically for them based on Microsoft technologies, an approval request is sent to the services team lead, Anthony, who approves the workspace. Once that approval is received, Automate 365, which is BindTuning's provisioning engine, is triggered. And with that, sorry, it's too quick. With that starts the automated deployment of a specific project workspace based on the sample that was created. Now, at the end, all the members and owners and guests that were defined as having to be added to that template are automatically given access to the team and the site and the planner and the Power BI. Let me show you how this works in practice. So we'll start by looking at the samples that were created. And if you recall, we talked about having a planner, a planning planner with 4 buckets and a couple of standard tasks. A Power BI report that has a data set with categories, dates, values, and a visualization of these data. A team within Teams that has 5 channels, all aligned with the topics that we said were priority, and a planner and Power BI access through tabs in the general channel, and the SharePoint site that includes all the data that was critical for managing the project, such as project call, duration, budget, live date, and most important, project milestones. Now, one thing to call out about the sample site that was created are the dollar signs that you see up here. And the reason why they're here is because they identify the data replacements that Maria and Alex identified as required. So, for example, the ones that you see here on the hero were manually added whenever a workspace was created, right? The Power BI that you see here was manually embedded on the page after being provisioned. The folders were manually created. The events, the monthly check-ins or milestones for the projects were manually added after the site was created. But why do we always have to do this manually if we already know what's happening, right? If we already have like a process for what we want to see when. So the first thing we had to do was create a template. Go. So we used Automate 365 for that. And we start by clicking on New Template, connecting with our Office 365 email to our tenant where we've built our samples. And I'll use the example of the Teams team and the SharePoint site behind it, but you could see all the platforms that are supported here. Now the engine is going to screen my environment. It was very quick, and I'm going to search for my store templates. Oh, there it is, store opening, team site template. The engine is now looking at my sample team and listing all the channels I've created, all the tabs, all the content I've added to that team. And it's going to give me the possibility to save it as part of the template or not. There we go. So you have all of the channels, the tabs. I can say that I no longer want the planner to be here, but for the sake of this demo, I'm going to keep everything. The SharePoint site that's behind that team also has a lot of things, right? And I want to keep it all. I want to keep the lists. I want to keep the folder structure, but I want to add one thing very important. If you recall, it was important for LP Foods to have always IT added as an owner, always the team members assigned to the project as members of the workspace, and eventually some guests, some visitors. So I'm saving that as well. I'm giving this a name, choosing a category. And I'm saving next to save my template. Now this takes, well, it depends, but it could take up to 15 minutes. So we're not going to be waiting for the template to be saved. I've already saved some templates for the workspaces that we've discussed. So the Teams, which has the SharePoint site behind it, the plan in Planner, and the Power BI dashboard. Once the templates are created, oh, there it comes. Once the templates are created, you'll have the option to deploy them, right? And with Automate 365, there are many ways that you can deploy a template that you've created. The simplest of them is on demand. So you're here, you're in your gallery of templates. Let's say you want to create a team based on the template we just created. We just need to say, okay, here's my Office 365 email. I want to create a team from scratch. I could also create a team from an existing Office 365 group. Let's say first you create the group with the people that are going to be working on the project. You could also do that. If you create the team from scratch, it will create everything for you. And I'll just say, okay, Ipanema, store opening, public, I could create more than one at the same time. And it should start running soon. So I'll not keep you waiting, but we'll keep an eye on progress. Now, if you recall, and let me go back to our side, to our PowerPoint, that was not really the use case we had with LT Foods, because we wanted more of a self-service model in which the senior project managers, Maria and Alex, submitted a request through an app. And in this case, what we did was build the Power App so that they could submit that request. We did that completely with Microsoft technologies. So this is the project directory we built for them. And you can see that we have the workspace requester button here saying, okay, you want to start a new project, click here. And you're redirected to the Power App completely out of the box, Microsoft technologies at its best. We select store opening and we can start submitting a request. Now, this could be anything. This could be an existing tool that you use, something like Salesforce or Jira or Zendesk. The possibilities here are endless. In their case, it was a Power App that we built. It could have been an existing Power App they had. So let me start by creating this project. Patient, goal, start dates. Let me find my start date. March 1. Okay. And it's going to end in May 31st. 80 hours, 20K of budget, not a big project. And now, to ensure that flexibility is still given to senior project managers, as Alex wanted, we can still remove some of the tools that are part of the workspace. So we could say that we don't want a planner to be created or that we don't want Power BI to be created. Now, we need to define who's part of the team, right? So we'll add some team members here. There we go. Guests. I'll add an external user here. I'm the requester of the workspace, and for the sake of the demo, I'll use myself as the approver as well. There we go. So what we've done now, after this request is submitted, is trigger an approval workflow. Again, this leverages Microsoft technology, so it should pop up any minute under my Teams app. Not yet. It should be arriving shortly. While we wait for it, let me just say that once the request has been submitted, the details we've submitted will immediately populate the list of projects that we have. So here you go, Acapulco store opening. It's already showing up here. Now this list is searchable, filterable, and sortable by the end user. So if I want to search my closed projects, I can, or the ones that are factory expansion projects, I can. And as an individual user, I can also sort my projects by estimated time. So pretty straightforward. I think our approval request is here. No, not yet. Okay, so let me give it a couple more minutes. There we go. Here it is. So it's here. I'm going to approve it. Then wait. And once the request is approved, then a hook will call Automatrix 65, our engine, and the deployment process of the workspace we've defined will start. Now, the deployment of the full workspace, the planner, the Power BI, the SharePoint site and team usually takes around 25 minutes with no manual intervention. Now, let me see if I can show you the progress here. Not yet. Let me refresh it. Maybe we'll see coming through. It should come here any minute. The Power BI dashboard is the first thing to be created, and I believe that's going to be the first thing that I'm going to show you live. There we go. Here it is. So if we see here, it's already starting to do some things on my Acapulco store opening project, right? So we can see that some installations have started, and it's preparing the store opening project budget tracking. So it's still working on my Power BI. We'll be able to see it shortly here in my list of Power BI dashboards. Let me refresh it for a second. Okay, there it is. So I've just created, this is the one I've just created with no dash. And you can see when I log in that it's exactly like the one I've shown you in my sample, right? It's just been customized with the title. Now it will do exactly the same for the other workspaces, but because I don't want to have you wait for 20 minutes for the other platforms, I've already submitted a request ahead of the call to create the full workspace. And there you go. So a site built for the store opening of Acapulco, linking to the teams within Microsoft Teams, linking to the planner that was created as well, embedding the Power BI that I've just shown you. You can open it there. And already including all the data that I submitted on the Power App. So the project goal, the duration, the budget, the countdown, right? And even the project milestones. So if my start date was, when was that? March 1st, then every 30 days, I told the engine that I would need a new event. So it automatically created those events for me and the folders. And it already added the people in my team that are going to be working on this project. So if I navigate through my project directory and I open here the Morecambe store and the, what else, Porto store and Lancaster store, you'll see that all of them follow the same logic. All of them have been created with the same flow, with a lot less manual work than would have been required if I was building all these workspaces one by one. Okay, so let me go back to my slide. And just to sum up what we've just seen, in the end, the solution implemented at Healthy Foods helped create a scalable strategy that builds on those challenges and opportunities that we've identified at the beginning. So not only we're supporting hybrid work in a fast-paced environment, but we're also giving structure and agility to the teams that are going to be working together in a constantly changing world. We're leveraging data and existing processes to drive performance and efficiency. And we're promoting governance through the adoption of policies, procedures, and best practices that ensure a well-governed workspace. In other words, we're creating a scalable deployment automation strategy that drives significant time and cost savings. So the question now is, how can you build a similar strategy? So you need to start by discussing and agreeing on what an ideal digital project management workspace looks like in your organization. You should incorporate the insights and the preferences of everyone that works with you, main stakeholders that work with you on managing a project. Then you need to create a sample, an ideal configuration for your tools. Then you should identify what are the desirable content replacements. Which actions or data do you manually do once the workspace is created? Do you add an event every month? Or do you add your team members? Then you also need to define and request an approval workflow and to nominate workspace owners and contributors to ensure that it always stays relevant and up to date. And finally, you need to leverage Automate 365 to run your deployment automation project. What do you need to do for that? So schedule an assessment with the BindTuning team. That's going to be a conversation around the scenario you're currently wanting to automate and the potential of the product and how can they both work together. And eventually you can start a trial, a guided pilot that will help you see how the product can address your current needs. Before closing, well, you have my contact details here should you want to reach out. But before closing, I want to leave room for some questions. I don't know if we have any on the chat, or if anyone wants to open their mic, just feel free to do it.
Yeah, hi, nice to see you
again.
again.
Hi, Gary, nice to see you.
Thanks for the demo. Just a simple question. Sometimes within a project, some communication is quite sensitive. I was just wondering, does the engine support private channels? You know, within Teams, you can have a private channel, which
Yes.
within that group, the communication is even more restricted.
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
And
cool.
share channels, right, Carlos? You're not letting me lie.
Yes, correct. Hi, Gary. Yes.
Hi, Carlos.
Yeah. Yes, it's true. So you can use neither private or shared channels inside the Microsoft Teams template.
Okay, cool. Well, that was a simple answer. Thanks.
Any other questions? I don't know if we have anything on the chat. Nope. Okay, well, you have our contact details, so feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or by email, and don't hesitate to book your, let me bring that up again in case just not everyone was able to catch it. So there you go, the QR code should you want to schedule an assessment or start a trial. Thank you so much for joining, and I hope this has been useful and inspiring. I hope to see you soon. Thank you.